The boardroom at Sterling Technologies falls into stunned silence as a man in an expensive suit displays a photo on the massive screen, showing a 12-year-old black boy sharing his lunch with someone sitting on a park bench. The corporate executives confident. Expressions shift to confusion as they recognize the homeless man in the photo as their CEO, billionaire William Sterling, who had disappeared for 2 weeks on what he called personal research. "Gentlemen, meet Elijah Washington," Sterling announces, his voice carrying unmistakable authority throughout the glass-walled conference room. "Yesterday, this 12-year-old boy gave half his school lunch to someone he thought was hungry and homeless. He didn't know he was sharing his food with the founder and CEO of a $40 billion technology empire." His eyes scan the room of executives who have never missed a meal. "Elijah told me his grandmother taught him that kindness costs nothing but means everything, and that anyone struggling deserves help. He gave me half his sandwich, his apple, and his juice box, probably representing a significant portion of his family's daily food." Budget, the gathered board members freeze in recognition. The child who yesterday showed pure compassion to a stranger now holds the key to transformations that will reshape everything Sterling Technologies stands for. And Elijah has no idea his life is about to change forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 24 hours earlier, William Sterling had been conducting the most unconventional market research of his 48-year life. As founder and CEO of Sterling Technologies, a company worth $40 billion that had revolutionized cloud computing and artificial intelligence, Sterling possessed wealth that placed him among the world's most powerful individuals. But his recent success had created an isolation from ordinary human experience that troubled him deeply. Sterling's journey to unimaginable wealth had begun in his parents' garage 30 years earlier, when he was a struggling computer science graduate with innovative ideas about data processing and no capital to implement them. His first breakthrough had come through pure determination and technical brilliance. But his rise to billionaire status had gradually separated him from the everyday realities that shaped most people's lives. The transformation had been gradual but profound. Private jets replaced commercial flights. Personal chefs replaced grocery shopping. Security details replaced casual public interaction. Wealth had created comfort and opportunity, but it had also built walls between Sterling and the authentic human connections that had once motivated his work. 6 months earlier, Sterling had experienced what he privately called his awakening moment during a board meeting where executives discussed market penetration, strategies for low-income demographics. The clinical language used to describe people struggling with poverty had shocked him. His own company was treating human hardship as business opportunity, rather than recognizing the dignity and worth of individuals facing economic challenges. That realization had prompted Sterling to begin questioning whether his wealth was serving humanity or merely accumulating for its own sake. He had built Sterling Technologies on the principle that technology should improve lives, but he had lost touch with the lives his innovations were supposed to enhance. His decision to spend 2 weeks living as a homeless person represented unprecedented market research, not for business strategy, but for personal understanding of poverty, kindness, and human dignity in circumstances he had never experienced, despite having grown up in modest middle-class circumstances. Sterling had prepared meticulously for his experiment. He had grown out his beard, obtained authentically worn clothing from homeless services organizations, and studied the mannerisms and speech patterns of individuals experiencing homelessness. Most importantly, he had arranged for round-the-clock security monitoring from a distance to ensure his safety while maintaining the authenticity of his experience. The East Side community where Sterling had chosen to conduct his research represented exactly the kind of neighborhood that his company's Demographic studies characterized as economically disadvantaged and low-priority market segments, but Sterling wanted to understand the human realities behind those corporate classifications. 12-year-old Elijah Washington lived with his mother, Gloria, and 8-year-old sister, Destiny, in a 2-bedroom apartment in the heart of East Side. Gloria worked double shifts, cleaning at Mercy General Hospital from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., then serving tables at Mario's family restaurant from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. to support her family after. Elijah's father had been killed in a construction accident 4 years earlier. The Washington family's financial situation was precarious but stable. Gloria's 2 jobs provided enough income for rent, utilities, groceries, and basic necessities, but left no margin for emergencies or luxuries. Every dollar was budgeted carefully, and Elijah had learned to appreciate the value of everything, from school supplies to the packed lunches his mother prepared each morning. Despite their economic challenges, the Washington household was rich in love, values, and community connection. Mama Rose Washington, Gloria's mother, lived in the same apartment complex and served as family anchor, providing childcare, wisdom, and the moral foundation that shaped Elijah's character. Mama Rose had raised Gloria with principles that emphasized kindness, generosity, and community responsibility regardless of personal circumstances. "Baby," she often told Elijah, "being poor in money doesn't mean being poor in spirit. We share what we have because that's what good people do, and goodness is the only wealth that really matters." These values had shaped Elijah into a remarkably mature and compassionate 12-year-old, who excelled academically despite the distractions of economic stress and family responsibility. He helped care for Destiny, contributed to household tasks, and maintained a 3.8 GPA while participating in Roosevelt Middle School's student government. Ms. Angela Porter, Elijah's 7th grade teacher, had observed his character development with professional admiration. Elijah demonstrates leadership qualities and empathy that are rare at any age, she had written in his evaluation. He consistently helps struggling classmates, mediates conflicts fairly, and shows genuine concern for others' welfare. His maturity and kindness make him a natural positive influence. Sterling's research methodology had involved spending days in East Side's public spaces, the community center, local parks, bus stops, and commercial areas, observing social dynamics and experiencing how people with wealth and privilege were perceived and treated by those facing economic hardship. What he had discovered over 13 days challenged every assumption his corporate demographic studies had made about low-income communities. Rather than finding hopelessness, crime, or social dysfunction, Sterling had encountered resilience, mutual support, and genuine human decency that contrasted sharply with the competitive individualism that characterized his wealthy social circles. The community members he had met while posing as homeless had shown him kindness, respect, and practical assistance despite having limited resources themselves. Their generosity had been offered without expectation of reward or recognition, motivated by simple human compassion rather than strategic networking or tax advantages. Sterling's experiment had been designed to last 2 weeks, but his encounter with Elijah Washington would transform abstract research into personal relationship that would redirect his wealth toward purposes he had never previously considered. The 12-year-old boy who had shared his lunch with a stranger was about to become the catalyst for philanthropic transformation that would reshape Sterling Technologies' mission and Sterling's understanding of what wealth should accomplish. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. William Sterling sat on the worn wooden bench in East Side Community Park. His 2-week experiment in experiencing homelessness having taught him more about human dignity and social isolation than 30 years of corporate success had prepared him for. The afternoon sun filtered through oak trees, that provided modest shade for families using playground equipment that showed signs of deferred maintenance but careful community care. Sterling had chosen this location for his final day of research because it represented the intersection of various community dynamics: children walking home from school, elderly residents socializing, working parents taking brief breaks from multiple job schedules, and community members using public spaces for social connection that private wealth typically purchased through exclusive venues. His appearance after 13 days of authentic homeless presentation was convincing: worn clothing that smelled of too many nights outside, unkempt beard, and the careful posture of someone trying to remain invisible while occupying public space that others might consider him unworthy of sharing. Elijah Washington appeared at the park's entrance at 3:47 p.m., walking with the purposeful stride of a student who understood the importance of getting home quickly to help with family responsibilities. His school backpack showed wear that suggested careful use rather than frequent replacement, and his clothing was clean but clearly chosen for durability rather than fashion. Sterling observed Elijah's approach with the analytical skills that had built his fortune, noting the boy's awareness of his surroundings, respectful distance from strangers, and obvious route toward the apartment complex that Sterling's research had identified as affordable housing for working families. What Sterling hadn't anticipated was that Elijah would notice him at all. Most people had avoided eye contact during his homeless experiment, their discomfort with poverty creating invisible barriers that isolated him more effectively than any physical boundaries. But Elijah paused in his walk, studying Sterling with curious concern rather than fearful avoidance. His expression showed the kind of empathetic assessment that suggested familiarity with economic hardship and genuine care for others experiencing difficulty. "Excuse me, sir," Elijah said politely, approaching the bench with respectful caution. "Are you okay? You look like you might be hungry or need some help." The direct offer of assistance surprised Sterling, who had become accustomed to being ignored or actively avoided by most people who encountered him during his research. Elijah's tone carried no condescension or pity, just sincere concern and willingness to help if possible. Sterling responded in the voice he had developed for his homeless persona. "I'm all right, son. Just taking a rest. Thank you for asking." But Elijah's assessment wasn't satisfied by polite deflection. His experience with economic insecurity had taught him to recognize when adults were minimizing their needs to avoid burdening others, and Sterling's obvious fatigue and thin appearance suggested someone who hadn't eaten recently. "Sir, when's the last time you had something to eat?" Elijah asked, with the gentle persistence that Mama Rose had taught him was appropriate when offering genuine help to people in need. The question touched something in Sterling that years of wealth and privilege had nearly buried: the memory of what hunger felt like, and what it meant when someone cared enough to notice and offer assistance without judgment or expectation. "It's been a while," Sterling admitted, the honesty coming easier than he had expected. "But I'll be fine. You don't need to worry about me." Elijah's response revealed character that went beyond his 12 years. "My mama and grandmama taught me that nobody should have to be hungry when other people have food to share. I've got lunch that I didn't finish at school today. Would you like half my sandwich and some other stuff?" The offer represented significant sacrifice that Sterling only understood because his research had taught him about the economic realities facing families like the Washingtons. School lunch might be Elijah's primary meal of the day, and sharing it meant genuine personal cost rather than casual generosity. "That's very kind of you," Sterling replied, his admiration for the boy's character genuine despite his assumed identity. "But I can't take your food. You need it more than I do." Elijah's persistence reflected values that prioritized community welfare over individual comfort. "Sir, I already ate most of my lunch at school. This is extra, and my grandmama says that when God gives you extra, you share it with people who need it. Please let me share with you. The theological framing revealed the moral foundation that shaped Elijah's worldview. Generosity as spiritual obligation rather than optional courtesy, and abundance measured by capacity to help others rather than accumulation of possessions. Sterling accepted the offer with gratitude that was entirely authentic. Elijah unpacked his school lunch bag, revealing a ham sandwich, apple, and juice box that represented careful maternal planning for nutrition and satisfaction within a constrained budget. "Here," Elijah said, dividing the sandwich precisely in half and offering Sterling the larger portion, along with the apple and juice. "My mama makes good sandwiches. She says eating together makes food taste better anyway." The simple act of sharing transformed Sterling's understanding of wealth, poverty, and human connection in ways that no corporate research or philanthropic study had achieved. This 12-year-old boy was demonstrating generosity that Sterling's billionaire social circle rarely exhibited, motivated by principles that Sterling had forgotten during his rise to extraordinary wealth. As they ate together on the park bench, Elijah talked about school, his family, and his dreams for the future. Becoming an engineer like his late father, helping his community through education and hard work, and taking care of his mother and grandmother, would sacrifice so much for his opportunities. Sterling listened with growing recognition that he was encountering exactly the kind of character and values that his wealth should serve rather than simply accumulate. Elijah's kindness wasn't performed for recognition or reward. It was authentic expression of principles that prioritized human dignity over personal advantage. The encounter lasted 37 minutes, but it would reshape Sterling's entire approach to wealth, responsibility, and the purpose of extraordinary resources in addressing human need and celebrating human goodness. The conversation between Elijah and Sterling continued as the afternoon shifted toward evening, their shared meal creating the kind of authentic human connection that Sterling had been seeking throughout his 2-week experiment but hadn't found until this 12-year-old boy had offered genuine hospitality without expectation or agenda. "What's your name, sir?" Elijah asked after they had finished eating, his natural curiosity and social skills making conversation feel comfortable rather than intrusive. Sterling had prepared various false identities for his research, but faced with Elijah's genuine interest, he found himself wanting to offer something closer to truth while maintaining his experimental parameters. "My name is Bill," he said, using his actual first name while omitting the surname that would have immediately revealed his wealth and status. "I'm Elijah Washington," the boy replied with the formal courtesy that Mama Rose had taught him for adult interactions. "I live over there with my mama and little sister and grandmama. We've been in Eastside for 6 years, since my daddy died." The casual mention of family tragedy revealed the resilience that Sterling had observed throughout the community. People who had experienced significant loss but continued building positive lives through mutual support and personal determination. "I'm sorry about your father," Sterling said, recognizing that Elijah's generosity had been shaped by understanding of hardship and the importance of human kindness during difficult circumstances. "Thank you," Elijah replied with matter-of-fact acceptance that suggested healthy grief processing. "Daddy always said that good people take care of each other no matter what happens. Mama and Grandmama make sure we remember that." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Destiny Washington, Elijah's 8-year-old sister, who approached the bench with the protective concern that came from family instructions about talking to strangers while maintaining the social openness that characterized their community. "Elijah, Mama Rose says you need to come home soon because Mama's working late tonight and we're supposed to help with dinner," Destiny announced, then looked curiously at Sterling. "Who's your friend?" Elijah's introduction revealed family values about treating all people with dignity. Destiny, this is Mr. Bill. I shared some lunch with him because he was hungry. Mama and Grandmama taught us that's what good people do. Destiny's response demonstrated that generosity was family culture rather than individual choice. Hi, Mr. Bill. Are you going to be okay tonight? It's supposed to get cold, and Grandmama worries about people who don't have warm places to sleep. The 8-year-old's concern for Sterling's welfare touched him profoundly. Two children from a family facing economic challenges were showing more genuine care for his assumed circumstances than most wealthy adults had demonstrated toward actual human need in his regular social circles. I'll be fine, Sterling assured them, though the approaching evening did represent genuine discomfort that his research was designed to experience authentically. Mr. Bill, Elijah said with the problem-solving mindset that economic necessity had developed, there's a community center about 4 blocks from here that lets people stay warm inside until 9 o'clock. And Pastor Johnson at New Hope Baptist sometimes helps people find places to stay when it's really cold. The practical assistance reflected community networks that Sterling's research had identified but not fully appreciated. Informal systems of mutual aid that provided safety. Nets for people facing temporary or chronic homelessness through local knowledge and resource sharing. Destiny added her own contribution. And Mr. Hassan at the corner store gives day-old bread and fruit to people who need food. He's really nice and won't make you feel bad about it. The children's detailed knowledge of community resources revealed how economic insecurity had taught them to be aware of assistance options while maintaining dignity and appreciation for help offered by local businesses and religious organizations. As evening approached and the children prepared to return home, Elijah made an offer that demonstrated extraordinary maturity and compassion. Mr. Bill, would you like to come have dinner with us? We don't have a lot, but Grandmama always makes enough for extra people. And she says our table is always open to folks who need a warm meal and friendly company. The invitation represented significant generosity from a family whose resources were carefully budgeted for necessities. Sharing dinner meant reducing portions for family members or dipping into food reserves that provided security against emergency need. Sterling's response required careful balance between maintaining his research methodology and recognizing the genuine kindness being offered. That's incredibly generous, Elijah, but I can't take food from your family. You've already shared so much with me today. Destiny's perspective revealed family values that prioritized community care over individual accumulation. Grandmama says that sharing food makes it multiply and that God provides for people who take care of each other. She's never wrong about that stuff. Elijah's persistence reflected principles that went beyond polite offers to genuine commitment to community welfare. Mr. Bill, you shared stories with us and made us feel good about helping. That's worth a lot too. Please come eat with us. Grandmama would be upset if we left you hungry when we have food to share. The moral framework that guided both children's thinking challenged Sterling's assumptions about poverty, generosity, and social responsibility. These children were demonstrating values that his wealthy social circle claimed to support through charitable donations, but rarely practiced through personal sacrifice and direct engagement with human need. Their conversation was creating exactly the kind of authentic human connection that Sterling's research had been designed to discover, but experiencing it personally was transforming his understanding of what wealth should accomplish and how extraordinary resources could serve rather than simply accumulate. As Elijah and Destiny prepared to leave for home, Sterling understood that this encounter had provided more insight into human character and social responsibility than years of corporate philanthropy, consulting, and demographic research had achieved. While Elijah Washington was sharing his lunch with the man he knew only as Bill, a comprehensive search operation was quietly unfolding. across multiple organizations and agencies, all focused on locating William Sterling, whose disappearance had triggered concerns ranging from corporate security to federal protection protocols. Catherine Mills, Sterling's personal assistant for 8 years, had been monitoring his personal research project with growing anxiety that bordered on professional alarm. Sterling had informed only Mills and Head of Security Captain Sarah Mitchell about his homeless experiment, requiring absolute secrecy that prevented broader organizational awareness of his location and activities. Mr. Sterling has been unreachable for 14 hours. Mills reported to Foundation Director James Parker via secure communication. His tracking devices show movement in the East Side District, but he's not responding to emergency contact protocols. Parker, who managed Sterling Technologies' charitable foundation and understood his employer's recent interest in poverty research, had been briefed on the general parameters of the experiment, but not its specific methodology or timeline. Catherine, the board meeting is scheduled for tomorrow morning, Parker reminded her. Sterling has never missed a board presentation, and the quarterly reports require his personal authorization. If he's extended this research beyond his planned timeline, we need contingency protocols. The corporate implications of Sterling's absence extended beyond scheduling inconvenience to operational security and fiduciary responsibility. Sterling Technologies was a publicly traded company whose stock price could fluctuate based on rumors about CEO availability and decision-making capacity. Captain Mitchell had been conducting discreet surveillance from a distance, sufficient to maintain Sterling's experimental authenticity while ensuring his physical safety. Her security team used advanced technology to monitor his location and activities, without interfering with the social dynamics he was trying to observe. Subject has been stationary in Community Park for 47 minutes, Mitchell reported to her team. He's engaged in extended conversation with 2 minors who appear to be offering food assistance. No security threats identified, but prolonged interaction may compromise operational security. Mitchell's professional concern was balancing Sterling's research objectives with protection protocols that assumed certain levels of risk were unacceptable regardless of personal or academic interest. Dr. Robert Chen, Sterling's financial advisor and longtime friend, had been reviewing market conditions that would require Sterling's immediate attention upon his return from the research experiment. Chen was one of the few people who understood Sterling's psychological motivation for the homeless experiment, a search for authentic human connection and moral purpose that extraordinary wealth had made increasingly difficult to find. Williams been struggling with isolation and meaninglessness that comes with extreme wealth. Chen had explained to Parker during a confidential consultation, this experiment isn't just academic research, it's personal therapy, designed to reconnect him with human experiences that his billionaire lifestyle has made impossible to access. Naturally, attorney Michelle Foster, Sterling's legal counsel, had been preparing documentation for the philanthropic initiatives that Sterling planned to implement based on his research findings. Foster understood that Sterling's experiment was likely to result in significant charitable commitments that would require careful legal structuring and tax optimization. Based on his preliminary discussions, Sterling is planning major foundation expansions focused on poverty alleviation and community development, Foster told her legal team. We need to be prepared for charitable commitments, potentially exceeding $1 billion, with emphasis on direct service rather than traditional grant-making. The legal implications of Sterling's planned philanthropy were complex, involving tax law, foundation regulations, and corporate governance requirements that would need careful coordination with his business operations. Meanwhile, at Roosevelt Middle School, Ms. Angela Porter had observed Elijah's absence from after-school tutoring and wondered about his whereabouts. As his teacher and academic mentor, Porter was familiar with Elijah's routine and his family's emphasis on consistent educational engagement. Elijah Washington didn't show up for tutoring today. Porter mentioned to Principal Dorothy Hayes during end-of-day administrative coordination. That's unusual for him. He's one of our most reliable students. Hayes had been tracking academic achievement and student welfare indicators as part of district accountability requirements, and Elijah's consistent performance made any deviation from routine noteworthy. Mrs. Betty Coleman, the Washington family's neighbor who provided after-school supervision when Gloria was working, had noticed Elijah's delayed return from school and was beginning to consider whether to contact Gloria at her restaurant job. Elijah's usually home by 4:15, Coleman told her husband during their own late afternoon routine. He knows his mama worries when he's not where he's supposed to be. That boy's too responsible to be late, without good reason. The community network that supported families like the Washingtons operated through informal monitoring and mutual assistance that provided security through social connection, rather than formal institutions. Pastor David Johnson at New Hope Baptist Church had been preparing for evening services when several congregation members mentioned seeing Elijah talking with an unfamiliar man in the community park. Johnson's pastoral concern reflected community protective instincts about children's safety, while balancing those concerns with appreciation for Elijah's mature judgment and character. Elijah Washington is one of our finest young people, Johnson told his wife. If he's helping someone, that reflects the values we've tried to teach. But children shouldn't have to provide care for adults experiencing homelessness. That's community responsibility, as various networks of concern and protection operated around both Sterling and Elijah. Neither the billionaire nor the 12-year-old understood that their spontaneous friendship was occurring within complex systems of care, security, and institutional interest that would soon converge around their relationship. The encounter that began with simple kindness was developing within organizational structures that would amplify its significance far beyond the personal connection between a wealthy man seeking authenticity and a generous child offering hospitality. William Sterling sat in the community park as evening approached, processing the profound impact of his encounter with Elijah Washington, while recognizing that his research experiment was nearing its planned conclusion. The 2 weeks of experiencing homelessness had provided insights that would reshape his understanding of wealth, responsibility, and human connection. But his conversation with Elijah had crystallized those abstract lessons into personal commitment to action. Sterling activated his encrypted emergency communication device, breaking the radio silence he had maintained throughout his experiment to contact Catherine Mills with instructions that would begin transforming his research into philanthropic implementation. Catherine, I need you to prepare for immediate transition from research phase to operational implementation, Sterling communicated via secure message. Tomorrow's board meeting will focus on comprehensive foundation restructuring and community investment initiatives. I'm ready to discuss specific commitments based on field research findings. Mill's relief at hearing from Sterling was evident in her immediate response. Mr. Sterling, thank you for checking in. The board has been prepared for significant announcements, and Foundation Director Parker has preliminary frameworks ready for your review. What level of resource commitment should we prepare to discuss? Sterling's reply reflected the transformation that his experiment and encounter with Elijah had created. Catherine, we're looking at foundation expansion that will exceed previous charitable giving by orders of magnitude. I want to discuss community development, educational opportunity, and direct service programs that address poverty through empowerment rather than dependency. The scope of Sterling's planned philanthropy represented fundamental shift from traditional charitable approaches that provided temporary assistance to systemic interventions that addressed root causes of economic inequality and social isolation. Captain Mitchell received Sterling's location update and confirmed security protocols for his transition back to regular operations. Mr. Sterling, we're prepared to provide discreet extraction whenever you're ready to conclude the research phase. Should we maintain surveillance of the subjects you've been interacting with for ongoing security assessment? Sterling's response revealed how profoundly the experiment had changed his perspective on security, privacy, and human dignity. Sarah, absolutely no surveillance of the Washington family. They showed kindness to someone they thought was homeless, and that generosity deserves protection, not monitoring. Any security measures should focus on ensuring their safety and privacy, rather than treating them as subjects of investigation. Meanwhile, Elijah had returned home to the Washington family apartment, where Mama Rose immediately noticed his unusually thoughtful mood and inquired about his delayed arrival from school. "Elijah, baby, you seem like you got something important on your mind," Mama Rose observed, with the intuitive perception that comes from decades of understanding children's emotional states. "Did something special happen today?" Elijah's response revealed how the encounter had affected him. "Grandmama, I met a man in the park who was hungry, and I shared my lunch with him. He seemed really grateful, and we talked about family and community and taking care of people. It made me think about what you taught me about kindness and sharing." Mama Rose's pride in her grandson's character was evident. "That's exactly right, baby. The good Lord puts people in our path for reasons we don't always understand right away. You did what your heart and your upbringing told you was right." Gloria Washington arrived home from her hospital shift to find Elijah helping Destiny with homework while Mama Rose prepared dinner. The family routine that provided stability despite economic challenges and demanding work schedules. "How was school today, baby?" Gloria asked Elijah while changing from her hospital scrubs into the restaurant. Uniform required for her evening. Shift Elijah's account of sharing lunch with a homeless man prompted Gloria's dual response of pride and concern. "I'm proud of you for being kind, Elijah, but I also want you to be careful around strangers. There are good people who need help, but there are also people who might not have good intentions toward children." Her maternal protective instincts balanced community values about generosity with realistic awareness of potential dangers that children faced when interacting with unfamiliar adults. Foundation Director James Parker was coordinating with legal and financial teams to prepare for Sterling's announced philanthropy expansion, understanding that the CEO's research experiment had been leading toward significant charitable commitments that would require sophisticated implementation strategies based on Mr. Sterling's preliminary communications. "We're looking at community development initiatives that could exceed our current foundation assets," Parker told his team during emergency planning session. "This isn't traditional grant-making. This appears to be comprehensive intervention designed to address systematic poverty and educational inequality." Dr. Chen was analyzing market implications of Sterling's planned philanthropy, recognizing that billion-dollar charitable commitments could affect Sterling Technologies' stock price and shareholder confidence depending on how they were structured and presented. Williams' philanthropic expansion needs to be framed as strategic investment in long-term social stability rather than emotional response to personal experience. Chen advised the corporate communications team. "Shareholders need to understand that addressing poverty and inequality serves business interests as well as humanitarian values." Attorney Foster was drafting legal frameworks for charitable initiatives that would provide tax benefits while ensuring maximum impact on community development and individual opportunity creation. Sterling's vision appears to focus on education, housing, and economic development that creates sustainable change rather than dependency, Foster explained to her legal team. "We need structures that can scale rapidly while maintaining accountability and measurable outcomes, as multiple organizational systems prepared for Sterling's return and the implementation of philanthropy, inspired by his encounter with Elijah. Neither the billionaire nor the 12-year-old fully understood how their spontaneous friendship would catalyze systematic change, affecting thousands of families and reshaping corporate approaches to social responsibility. The simple act of sharing lunch was about to transform into comprehensive community development that would demonstrate how individual kindness could inspire institutional transformation when backed by extraordinary resources and genuine commitment to human dignity. The Sterling Technologies boardroom at 9 a.m. represented the convergence of corporate power and personal transformation as William Sterling prepared to reveal how a 12-year-old boy's kindness had reshaped his understanding of wealth, responsibility, and the purpose of extraordinary resources. The 12 board members assembled around the mahogany conference table represented collective business experience spanning decades and industries. But none had anticipated that their quarterly meeting would focus on philanthropy, inspired by a homeless experiment and a shared sandwich. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sterling began, displaying Elijah's photograph on the massive screen. "Yesterday I completed 2 weeks of research experiencing homelessness in the East Side community. This young man, Elijah Washington, shared his school lunch with someone he thought was hungry and homeless. He had no idea he was showing kindness to the founder of a $40 billion company. Board Chairman Robert Hayes, Sterling's longtime mentor and friend, immediately understood the significance. "William, you're describing the kind of authentic human connection that we've discussed as missing from corporate philanthropy. This boy demonstrated values that our charitable giving has claimed to support, but rarely encountered directly." Sterling's response revealed how profoundly the experiment had affected his priorities. "Bob, Elijah gave me half his sandwich, his apple, and his juice box while talking about his grandmother's teaching that kindness costs nothing but means everything. His family lives on his mother's wages from 2 jobs, yet they offered to share dinner with a stranger because that's what their values require." Chief Financial Officer Patricia Wu raised the practical concerns that fiduciary responsibility demanded. "William, while this experience obviously affected you personally, the board needs to understand what operational and financial implications you're considering. Are we discussing expanded charitable giving or fundamental changes to corporate mission?" Sterling's reply demonstrated that his transformation was comprehensive rather than sentimental. "Patricia, we're discussing both. I want to restructure our foundation to focus on community development, educational opportunity, and economic empowerment that addresses systematic rather than symptomatic poverty. Initial commitment will be $5 billion. Over 5 years, the magnitude of proposed philanthropy created visible shock among board members, who had expected incremental expansion rather than revolutionary reallocation of corporate resources technology. Director Lisa Martinez voiced concerns about competitive implications. "William, $5 billion in charitable commitments could affect our market position and shareholder confidence. How do we frame this level of philanthropy as strategic business decision rather than emotional response to personal experience?" Sterling's response reflected strategic thinking that incorporated both humanitarian and business considerations. "Lisa, addressing poverty and educational inequality creates market stability, expands our potential customer base, and demonstrates corporate responsibility that enhances brand value. This isn't charity, it's investment in social foundation that enables long-term business success." Foundation Director James Parker provided operational context for Sterling's vision. "The board should understand that Mr. Sterling's proposed initiatives focus on sustainable change rather than temporary assistance. We're discussing educational scholarships, community development, small business support, and housing initiatives that create independence rather than dependency." Sterling displayed detailed photographs from his experiment, showing the community centers, schools, local businesses, and residential areas that had shaped his understanding of poverty and resilience. These images represent human dignity and mutual support that exist despite economic challenges. Our philanthropy should amplify existing community strengths rather than imposing external solutions. Board member Dr. Angela Chen, who directed corporate social responsibility initiatives, recognized the innovative approach Sterling was proposing. William, you're describing community development that treats residents as partners rather than recipients. That's more complex than traditional charitable giving, but potentially more effective for creating lasting change. The discussion was interrupted by Catherine Mills, who entered with urgent communication from Captain Mitchell. Mr. Sterling, we've received media inquiries about your recent activities in the East Side community. Someone may have recognized you during your research. Experiment. Sterling's response revealed his commitment to protecting the Washington family's privacy while maintaining transparency about his philanthropic intentions. Catherine, prepare a statement confirming my research activities and announcing our foundation expansion, but ensure that no specific individuals or families are identified without their consent. The people who showed me kindness deserve protection, not publicity. Legal counsel Michelle Foster addressed potential complications. William, media attention could create safety and privacy concerns for the families you encountered. We need to balance public interest in your philanthropic announcement with protection of private citizens who didn't consent to being part of corporate communication. Sterling's decision revealed how thoroughly his experiment had changed his perspective on wealth and responsibility. Michelle, we'll announce our foundation expansion and community development initiatives without identifying specific individuals who inspired those commitments. Elijah Washington and his family deserve to continue their lives without becoming symbols or subjects of media attention. Marketing Director Thomas Brooks recognized the opportunity. Sterling's story created, William, your homeless experiment and resulting philanthropy could become powerful demonstration of corporate leadership and social responsibility. The authenticity of your experience would differentiate our charitable initiatives from typical corporate giving. But Sterling's response showed that his transformation prioritized substance over publicity. Tom, our philanthropy should be evaluated based on community impact rather than marketing value. If our initiatives improve education, create economic opportunity, and strengthen families, that success speaks for itself without requiring personal narratives or individual recognition. As the board meeting continued with detailed planning for foundation expansion and community development programs, Sterling understood that his encounter with Elijah had created more than charitable commitment. It had established personal relationship and moral obligation that would guide his use of extraordinary wealth for the rest of his life. The 12-year-old boy who had shared his lunch with a stranger was about to become the inspiration for systematic philanthropy that would transform thousands of lives while remaining protected from the publicity and pressure that such attention could create. The 24 hours following Sterling's board announcement triggered a comprehensive mobilization of resources that transformed theoretical philanthropy into operational community development program with unprecedented speed and scope. Foundation Director James Parker coordinated with legal, financial, and logistics teams to implement Sterling's $5 billion commitment through mechanisms that would ensure accountability, sustainability, and community partnership. Rather than external imposition of solutions, we're establishing the Sterling Community Development Initiative, with initial focus on the East Side District. Parker announced to assembled foundation staff, our approach emphasizes resident leadership, educational opportunity, economic development, and housing stability through collaborative partnership rather than traditional charitable distribution. Dr. Angela Chen, promoted to Director of Community Partnerships, began coordinating with East Side leaders to ensure that Sterling's philanthropy would amplify existing community strengths rather than replacing local initiative with external resources. Our first priority is listening to community members about their priorities and goals, Chen explained during her initial meeting with Pastor David Johnson, Mrs. Betty Coleman, and other East Side advocates. Mr. Sterling's experience taught him that communities have wisdom and solutions that outsiders need to respect and support rather than override. Pastor Johnson's response revealed both appreciation and protective concern. We welcome partnership that honors our community's dignity and builds on our existing assets. But we've seen well-intentioned programs create dependency or displacement. How do we ensure this initiative serves residents rather than serving donors' preferences? The question reflected sophisticated understanding of philanthropy's potential negative impacts that Sterling's research had prepared the foundation to address through community control and long-term commitment. Meanwhile, the Washington family was experiencing their normal routine without awareness that Elijah's kindness had triggered institutional changes that would reshape their community and educational opportunities. Gloria Washington dropped Elijah and Destiny at school before beginning her hospital shift. Her conversation with Elijah focusing on his homework and upcoming science fair project, rather than his encounter with the homeless man who had been so grateful for shared lunch. Mama, do you think that man I shared lunch with yesterday is okay? Elijah asked as they walked toward Roosevelt Middle School. I keep thinking about whether he found a warm place to sleep and something to eat for dinner. Gloria's response reflected family values while addressing her son's developing social consciousness. Baby, you did what was right by being kind and sharing what you had. We can't control what happens to people after we help them, but we can control whether we act with love when we have opportunity. Mama Rose Washington was preparing for her morning routine when she received an unexpected visit from Ms. Angela Porter, Elijah's teacher, who had come to discuss his exceptional character and academic potential. Mrs. Washington, I wanted to speak with you about Elijah's remarkable maturity and leadership qualities, Porter began. Yesterday, several students mentioned seeing him share his lunch with someone in the park. That kindness, combined with his academic excellence, suggests he might benefit from advanced educational opportunities. Mama Rose's pride in her grandson was evident. That boy's got a heart as big as his brain. We raised him to understand that helping others is what good people do, no matter what their circumstances. His daddy would be proud of the young man he's becoming. At Sterling Technologies, Catherine Mills was coordinating media strategy to announce the foundation expansion while protecting the Washington family's privacy and maintaining focus on community development rather than individual stories. We're positioning this as comprehensive community investment inspired by research, showing the strength and dignity of working families facing economic challenges. Mills explained to the communications team, Mr. Sterling's personal experience motivated the initiative, but the focus remains on systematic change rather than individual recognition. Legal counsel Michelle Foster was structuring the charitable commitments to ensure maximum community benefit while providing tax advantages and accountability mechanisms that would satisfy both IRS requirements and Sterling's commitment to transparent, effective philanthropy. The Sterling Community Development Initiative will operate through local partnerships, educational scholarships, small business development, and housing assistance that creates ownership rather than dependency, Foster outlined in legal documentation. Each program includes community oversight and measurable outcomes. Dr. Robert Chen was analyzing market response to Sterling's philanthropic announcement, noting that investor reaction had been overwhelmingly positive due to the strategic framing of community investment as long-term business development, rather than purely charitable expense. Shareholders are responding favorably to Sterling's community development approach because it demonstrates corporate leadership and social responsibility that enhances brand value, Chen reported to the board. The authenticity of his research methodology validates the philanthropic commitment as strategic rather than impulsive principle. Dorothy Hayes at Roosevelt Middle School received notification from the district office about potential educational partnership opportunities that could provide enhanced resources for student achievement and community development were being contacted by the Sterling Foundation about possible collaboration on educational initiatives, Hayes told Ms. Porter during administrative planning. They're specifically interested in supporting academic excellence and community leadership development. Porter's response reflected her advocacy for students like Elijah. Any partnership should prioritize our existing students' potential rather than importing external programs. We have remarkable young people who need opportunity, not replacement. Pastor Johnson convened community leaders to discuss the Sterling Foundation's outreach and ensure that any philanthropic partnership would serve residents' priorities rather than donors' preferences. We've been contacted about potential community development initiatives that could bring significant resources to Eastside, Johnson announced to the gathered advocates. Our response needs to protect our community's autonomy while welcoming partnership that amplifies our existing strengths. Mrs. Coleman, who understood the economic challenges facing families like the Washingtons, expressed cautious optimism. If these programs create real opportunities for our children and support working families, that could make a tremendous difference. But we need to ensure community control and long-term commitment. The Sterling Foundation's community assessment team began conducting door-to-door interviews to understand residents' priorities, challenges and goals for their neighborhood's development. We're here to listen rather than prescribe, Dr. Chen told families during initial conversations. Our role is supporting community vision rather than imposing external solutions. Attorney Jerome Williams, who specialized in community development law, was contacted by Pastor Johnson to review any proposed partnerships and ensure that residents' interests were protected. Through legal oversight and community control mechanisms, philanthropic partnerships can create tremendous opportunity, but they can also lead to displacement or dependency if not structured properly, Williams advised community leaders. Legal review ensures that residents maintain decision-making authority over their community's development as the Sterling Foundation's outreach continued and community leaders prepared to evaluate potential partnerships. Neither the foundation nor the East Side residents understood that Elijah Washington's simple act of kindness had created the moral foundation for collaboration that would transform thousands of lives. The 12-year-old boy who had shared his lunch continued his normal routine of school, homework, and family responsibilities, unaware that his generosity had inspired institutional commitment to addressing poverty through empowerment rather than charity. Sterling's billion-dollar philanthropy was beginning to take operational form, but its success would depend on maintaining the same spirit of respect, dignity, and mutual care that Elijah had demonstrated during their spontaneous friendship in the community park. Over the following 8 weeks, the Sterling Community Development Initiative implemented the most comprehensive transformation in East Side's history, creating changes that served as a national model for philanthropy that empowered communities rather than creating dependency through external control. The Community Partnership Center, established in a renovated building on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, was directed by Dr. Angela Chen in collaboration with a resident advisory board that included Pastor Johnson, Mrs. Coleman, and other longtime community leaders who ensured local priorities guided all programming decisions. We're not bringing solutions to problems, Dr. Chen explained during the center's opening ceremony, attended by 300 residents. We're providing resources that amplify existing community wisdom and support locally identified goals. Every program operates through resident leadership, with foundation resources supporting rather than directing community vision. The approach emphasizes partnership rather than charity, recognizing that Eastside residents possess knowledge, skills, and social networks that external philanthropy should strengthen rather than replace. Principal Hayes worked with foundation education specialists to implement the Academic Excellence Initiative, providing advanced learning opportunities, college preparation support, and scholarship pathways that built on Roosevelt Middle School's existing strengths while expanding possibilities. For students like Elijah, the Sterling Education Partnership doesn't change our school's mission, Hayes explained to parents during information sessions. It provides resources that help us better serve students who are already demonstrating exceptional potential and character. Ms. Porter was selected to direct the Student Leadership Development Program, using her understanding of community values and student potential to create opportunities that honored families' sacrifices while expanding children's possibilities. We're identifying students like Elijah Washington who show academic excellence and community responsibility, Porter told foundation coordinators. These young people represent our community's future, and they deserve opportunities that match their potential. The Housing Stability Initiative, managed through partnership with local banks and real estate professionals, provided down payment assistance, financial literacy education, and home ownership support that helped working families like the Washingtons transition from rental to ownership while remaining in their community. Gloria Washington was among the first residents to receive homeownership counseling. Her stable employment and responsible financial management, making her an ideal candidate for the program despite her previous inability to accumulate savings for down payment. Requirements. This program could help me buy a house for my children, Gloria told Mama Rose after attending information sessions. All those years of working 2 jobs and paying rent on time means something. We could have our own home instead of worrying about landlords and rent increases. The Small Business Development Center provided microloans, business training, and marketing support for resident entrepreneurs whose enterprises could serve community needs while creating local employment and economic circulation. Mr. Ahmed Hassan, whose corner store had been serving East Side families for 12 years, received expansion funding that allowed him to add fresh produce, educational supplies, and community meeting space while hiring additional employees from the neighborhood. The Sterling Partnership respects businesses that already serve this community. Hassan explained during the center's expansion celebration, "They're helping us grow rather than competing with us or replacing us, William." Sterling maintained personal involvement in the initiative while respecting community autonomy and the Washington family's privacy. His quarterly visits to East Side focused on program evaluation and community feedback rather than publicity or personal recognition. My role is ensuring foundation resources serve community priorities rather than imposing external agendas, Sterling told foundation staff during planning meetings. The residents know what their community needs better than any outside expert. The Workforce Development Program operated through partnership with local employers and trade organizations, provided job training, placement assistance, and career advancement support that connected community members with employment opportunities while addressing regional labor needs. Gloria Washington enrolled in healthcare administration training that built on her hospital experience while preparing her for supervisory positions that offered better wages and more predictable scheduling than her current double-shift arrangement. This training could help me get one good job instead of 2 hard jobs, Gloria told her family. Same income but better hours and benefits. That means more time with my children and less stress about making ends meet. The Community Health Initiative established a medical clinic, nutrition education programs, and wellness services that addressed healthcare needs while building on existing community support networks and traditional healing knowledge. Mama Rose Washington was invited to share her knowledge of traditional remedies and community care practices, her wisdom being documented and integrated with modern medical services rather than dismissed or replaced. "They want to learn from us instead of just teaching us," Mama Rose told her neighbors. "That's respect. These foundation people understand that communities have wisdom that goes back generations." Pastor Johnson's congregation received foundation support for expanding community programs, youth development and social services that had been operating with volunteer labor and minimal resources for decades. The Sterling Partnership amplifies our existing ministry rather than competing with it, Johnson told denominational leaders. They understand that churches have been providing community development long before foundations discovered poverty. Data analysis 6 months into the initiative showed remarkable results. Home ownership increased by 23%, small business revenue grew by 34%, high school graduation rates improved to 96%, and college enrollment doubled among community students. Empowerment-based philanthropy creates measurably better outcomes than dependency-based charity, Dr. Chen reported to Foundation board members. When residents control their community's development, every indicator improves. The Sterling Community Development Initiative was attracting national attention from philanthropists, policymakers, and community development specialists who recognized its potential for replication in other communities facing similar challenges. What's happening in Eastside demonstrates that authentic partnership between wealth and community creates transformation that neither could achieve alone. Sterling told congressional hearings on poverty alleviation, 12 months after Elijah Washington shared his lunch with a stranger. William Sterling returned to the same park bench where their encounter had transformed his understanding of wealth, community, and the purpose of extraordinary resources in serving human dignity and potential. The transformation was evident throughout Eastside. Streets that had once shown signs of economic disinvestment now featured renovated housing, thriving businesses, and community spaces where residents gathered for education, recreation, and mutual support. The atmosphere of economic anxiety had been replaced by hope, opportunity, and collective pride in community-controlled development. Elijah, now 13 and flourishing academically through the Sterling Education Partnership, approached the bench where Sterling waited, their planned reunion marking the anniversary of the encounter that had catalyzed comprehensive community transformation. "Mr. Sterling," Elijah said, using the formal name he had learned after discovering his lunch companion's identity, "I want to show you something." He led Sterling to a bronze plaque installed at the park entrance, reading, "In honor of everyday kindness that creates extraordinary change. When we share what we have, we discover what's possible." The community wanted to commemorate what happened here, Elijah explained. "But Grandmama said it shouldn't be about you or me specifically. It should be about the principle that kindness multiplies when people have resources and opportunity to build on it." Sterling's response reflected how profoundly the experience had changed his perspective. "Elijah, that's exactly right. What happened here wasn't about one person helping another. It was about recognizing the dignity and wisdom that exists in every community, and learning how wealth can serve those values rather than replacing them." Gloria Washington, who had recently purchased her family's home through the Housing Stability Initiative and was completing healthcare administration certification, joined them at the park with Destiny and Mama Rose for what had become an annual friendship celebration. "Mr. Sterling, I want you to know how much the Foundation's partnership has meant to our family and community," Gloria said. "But what matters most is that you respected our dignity and supported our goals, rather than imposing outside solutions." Mama Rose, whose traditional knowledge had been incorporated into the community health initiative while maintaining her role as neighborhood elder and wisdom keeper, provided perspective that connected individual kindness to systemic change. "Baby," she told Sterling, "what you learned from Elijah is what we try to teach all our children, that how we treat people reveals who we are, and that sharing creates abundance rather than scarcity. Your foundation understood that lesson and built programs that multiply kindness instead of just distributing money." The Sterling Community Development Initiative had expanded to 12 cities nationwide, each implementation guided by local leadership and community priorities while utilizing foundation resources to amplify existing assets and resident vision. Dr. Angela Chen, promoted to National Director, had developed replication frameworks that emphasize community partnership principles rather than standardized programming, ensuring that each site reflected local culture and priorities. The East Side model works because it starts with respect for community wisdom and builds foundation support around resident goals. Chen explained to philanthropists and policymakers studying the initiative that approach creates sustainability and ownership that traditional charity cannot achieve. Ms. Porter, who had become Regional Education Director, coordinated scholarship and academic support programs that had resulted in 94% college enrollment among participating students, with many choosing to return to their communities as teachers, healthcare providers, and business leaders. Students like Elijah represent their community's investment in education and character development, Porter told education conferences. "Our role is providing opportunity that matches their potential while honoring family values and community connections." The initiative's economic impact had been transformational. Unemployment decreased by 67%, median household income increased by 45%, and community-owned businesses generated $23 million in annual revenue that circulated locally rather than flowing to external corporations. William Sterling had restructured Sterling Technologies' corporate mission to integrate community development as core business strategy rather than supplementary charitable activity, demonstrating that social responsibility enhanced rather than hindered profitability. The East Side Partnership taught us that addressing poverty and inequality creates market stability, expands customer base, and generates social capital that supports long-term business success, Sterling told shareholders during annual meetings. Community development isn't charity, it's strategic investment in social foundation that enables sustainable economic growth. Elijah's academic achievements had earned him early admission to MIT with full scholarship, but his plans included returning to East Side as an engineer who would contribute to continued community development. While pursuing advanced education, I want to use my education to help my community and other communities like ours, Elijah told Sterling during their anniversary conversation. "You showed me that resources and knowledge should serve people's dignity and potential rather than replacing community wisdom with outside expertise." As Sterling prepared to leave East Side for his quarterly foundation review, he reflected on how a 12-year-old's spontaneous generosity had taught him more about wealth, purpose, and human connection than decades of business success had provided. The park bench where Elijah had shared his lunch now anchored a community where children's kindness was supported by institutional resources, where families' hard work resulted in ownership and opportunity, and where community wisdom guided external partnership rather than being replaced by it. Most importantly, Eastside demonstrated that authentic philanthropy required learning from recipients rather than imposing solutions, building on existing strengths rather than assuming deficiencies, and creating partnership rather than dependency. The boy who had shared his sandwich with a stranger had taught a billionaire that true wealth lay in community connection, mutual respect, and the multiplication of kindness through resources devoted to human dignity rather than institutional control. That transformation from individual charity to systematic empowerment, from external solutions to community partnership, from temporary assistance to permanent opportunity, represented the kind of change that made extraordinary wealth serve extraordinary purpose in creating justice and possibility for all. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.